time to armor up and level out. Listen up and hear what we're about.
Welcome back to Armor Radio. Josh here by myself, trying a little bit of a different format today. We're going to talk about 5 keys to sustainable fat loss. Before I get any further into that, there is a billion videos that you can get onto with people much smarter than myself. A lot of the stuff that I have is evidence-based, is scientifically backed, but a lot of it's anecdotal that comes from 22 years of working with athletes, of experimenting with myself, which I absolutely love to do. So maybe you can take away all 5. Maybe you can take away 1. Maybe you can enter the conversation with an open mind, or maybe you can comment below on how wrong I am about life and all of the decisions I've made, and that's fine too. But before we go any further, we're going to set up an umbrella of what needs to happen, of what I believe, and I think what science will show is that all of this needs to be housed under an umbrella. And the umbrella is simply burn more calories than you consume. So all of the 5 come with that in mind, or they, again, are under that umbrella of burning more calories than I consume. Then these are tactics that you can apply forever that help make that happen. So, after I say that, we're going to dive into number 1, and number 1 is simply count calories by the week, not by the day. So we first need to get into, yes, you got to count calories. Now, there are going to be those sorts, and God bless them, that's great, that say they don't need to count calories, and they still lose fat, or they still maintain fat loss, or they still look the way they want to look. I might not be speaking to those specific athletes, and that's totally fine. Good for you. You're blessed. Now, for the rest of us, I would urge you, and I would recommend that what I've seen many times more often than not is the athletes that will count their calories, and then by extension, count their calories by the week and not the day, tend to find the most success when it comes to fat loss in general, but also fat loss forever, or a sustainable body that you want to have. And I would urge those who say, I can't count my calories, I refuse to. If you say those things, and that's how you think, and you look the way you want to look, and you have the level of body fat that you want to have, then good for you. But I would also urge that if you're the type of person that says, I really want to look different, I've never had anything, never had a tactic that's worked before, and you've refused this one tactic of counting your calories and counting your calories by the week and not by the day, then this is something that you could give a try. At least try it for 4 to 6 weeks and see what it does. So let's make an example of this. Let's say that I needed 7,000 calories in a week to be able to lose fat. Okay. Now, that being said, obviously there's not that many people that are going to eat 7,000 calories over the entire week. I'm just doing this for the sake of math. But you get the idea that I would need to have about 1,000 calories a day. Okay, great. But what if you had one day where you had 500 on Monday, you had 500 calories on Tuesday, and then you can see where you can start to bank a little bit of calories that maybe you inject towards the end of the week. So what I mean by that is you could take like a Saturday as more of a refeed day if you're collecting calories through the week. So let's say that I need to be in a caloric deficit of 500 calories a day, but that's just to hit that fat loss goal. If I dropped it to 600 or 700, then I would have an extra few hundred calories each and every day. I did that Monday through Friday, then all of a sudden it gets to Saturday, and I have several hundred, if not 1,000 calories to play with that I could offer into, maybe it's just more food, maybe it's a cheat meal if it's planned. I'm not sure I'd call it a cheat, but whatever you want to call it, maybe it's a snack, whatever that is, you can look at that over the course of a week instead of daily. And I also think, and I think there's some science that's going to show this, Dr. Lane Norton, Dr. Andy Galpin have done studies about these refeedings where let's say you don't know what your caloric needs are for the day to be able to lose fat. I'll give you a really arbitrary amount that I think works really well for athletes. Take your current body weight times 15. That gives you a maintenance level of calories you eat each day. Now, again, that's super arbitrary. That's not for everybody. Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe that does work. But if your maintenance is that 15 calories per pound of body weight per day, and you would just go and subtract 500 calories from that each and every day, then that shows you how you can manipulate daily. Maybe Monday, you work a lot, you're busy all the time, you don't even have to think about food. So because of that, you take your calories down, but that gives you, again, a little bit of a banked caloric amount that when you get to Wednesday, when you're hungry, you got a little bit more time, you like to go out at night, whatever it may be, you have an extra 800 calories to be able to spend with that. Or like I said, maybe Saturday and Sunday you like to get into it. So again, tactic number one for sustainable fat loss is count calories by the week, something I've been doing for the past decade that works really, really well. Instead of by the day, okay? Number two is you're gonna start with protein, and everybody has talked about this, so I'm not gonna spend tons and tons of time, but what I mean by that is if you look at your macros and you have protein, fat, and carbohydrates, make sure, no negotiation, that you get your required protein amount in, then worry about the other two macros, carbohydrates and fat. Now, you can say, well, what's the recommended protein requirement per day per athlete? There's going to be a whole mess of literature on why this way works and why this way works. I can tell you what I've recommended for the past 2 decades plus, and even how I've went above that, and I get my biomarkers checked about every 6 months, and I've been totally fine. But I would say that most athletes would do well to very simply just start with 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight each day. You weigh 200 pounds, you eat 200 grams of protein, you divide that by the amount of times that you eat in a day, and then, like I said, no negotiation, you do that each and every day. I hate to break hearts, but it doesn't really work if Monday and Tuesday you're awesome, Wednesday and Thursday you're not, Friday and Saturday you're awesome, and then Sunday you decide not to eat anything. It doesn't really work that well. For anybody and everybody that's ever really, really dived into fat loss, to gaining muscle as much as they can or as fast as they can, even to strict performance, it's going to be adhering to that each and every day, whatever that amount may be. Now, like I said, 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. I've had upwards of almost 300 grams. I only weigh about 200 pounds, so I'm well above that, and I've done that for more than 10 years. I've done that for almost 2 decades, and I've seen no negative side effects in terms of, well, really anything. So take that for what it's worth. You may want to obviously get your biomarkers checked every 3, 6 months to a year. You may want to just do that for fun to see how the experiment works. Are there disorders that you could get into that may prevent that? Sure, you should know that. This isn't a doctor telling you what to do. This is just anecdotally speaking, backed by science, that this is what I would do. Number one, count your calories by the week. And then number two, start with your protein, then backfill with your fat and with your carbohydrates. We could get way into the weeds of what that needs to look like, but I would say that if it's based on fat loss, carbohydrates are not bad, but carbohydrates make somebody like me more hungry. Somebody like me, I can just very simply say, I don't know what it's like to eat 1 donut. I know what it's like to sit down with 24 donuts and to wake up 30 minutes later in a diabetic coma, because that's just how it works for me. If you're like me, maybe you want to have more protein and fat, not so many carbohydrates. If you're somebody else who can eat just one of something, good for you. I don't know what that's like. I'm just telling you what I've seen work for myself and other athletes. Number 3, and I know this sounds really pithy or flippant, but it's be consistent with whatever those metrics are and those calorie counts are each and every day. So I say that to say that is there wiggle room depending on a busy day, depending on some weird stuff that may come up in a week? Sure. But for the most part, I'm trying to inject the discipline of such things like eat at the same times every day if at all possible, get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time. Little things here that may be separated from the actual dinner table that may not look like they apply to it, but that very much do in the outcome. So discipline here is interesting that it gives you discipline everywhere. So be consistent would be my third tactic for sustainable forever fat loss, but it's be consistent in everywhere that surrounds the dinner table, not just worried about the calories, but and also the calories. Now, number 4, and this is gonna immediately make a lot of people just click this off, is eat the same thing every day. It's challenging when you start that to imagine eliminating some variety from the menu, but if you think about it as decision fatigue sets in, as all of the competing factors for our time seem to just multiply, if we can remove some of that noise, that signal becomes present and we're more easily able to achieve whatever our goal may be. So what I would do is maybe pick, let's say that you eat 3 meals a day. Maybe your first meal is exactly the same Monday through Friday. And then your second meal, whatever time that may be, is exactly the same Monday through Friday. And then your third meal, your dinner, is exactly the same Monday through Friday. Maybe it's something to where you do the meal prepping, and that's totally fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I would suggest that you make that not necessarily part of like Sunday. I see a lot of athletes that tend to do this on like a day off, and that's great, but they always seem to do it for a few weeks and then kind of fall off, because those days when you can go outside of the rails, when you get to play a little bit, it seems to be hard to calm it all down and then sit in the kitchen for 3 hours trying to cook a whole bunch of variety of meals, when maybe instead you took like a Wednesday night and you cooked a whole bunch of the exact same thing that you could take through it. Or maybe you get a little bit outside of the rails, whereas every dinner has the same protein, but I change the vegetable that may go alongside it. But in general, I'm eating about the same menu each and every day. Now, I go back to that to say, I said Monday through Friday. However you decide your week is totally fine. I'm just using what would be the norm. Maybe on Saturday and Sunday, again, not only have I banked my calories from tactic number 1, so maybe I could add a little bit to it, but maybe it's on those days when I can have something that is a little different than my normal menu. So I'd say, 85, 90% of the time, I'm eating the exact same thing, and I would recommend that my athletes eat the exact same thing each and every day. If you're really worried about some sort of nutrient deficiency, again, I've been doing this for 22 plus years. I've not seen anything like that happen with my athletes or with myself, and I would recommend, and not only do you get your biomarkers checked, but you can also look at things like nutrient deficiency testing to see if something like that would come about. But again, my 4th rule would be to have the same menu mostly every day. Number 5, our last diet tactic is be bland. And again, if you didn't click off for the 4th one, then you probably click off with this one. But there's a lot of foods out there, a lot of manufacturers competing with taste. Everything has to taste this much better, be this much more exciting, this novel. And that in and of itself, that racing for a better taste, tends to get us into trouble, but also lends itself really well to eating more calories than what we need. So what I've discovered, I want my food to taste good. I'm not saying I don't like it to taste good. I'm not saying I make it taste bad, but I try to make it as bland as I can make it so that I'm not constantly chasing a new and more exciting taste. So let's say that I'm somebody who's new to this and I've been eating your standard American fare, whatever that may be, but we'll say a lot of processed food that's meant to taste really, really good. Well, you step it down a notch. You take it from the best possible tasting thing you can imagine, one step down. You get used to that, one step down. You get used to that, one step down. All of a sudden, things that tasted bland and boring before, and I guess it's not all of a sudden, I guess it happens over time, but things that happened before start to taste better. This is where things like fruit become a treat. This is where things like vegetables become the thing that you crave instead of ice cream. I know that sounds crazy, but again, this comes from 20 some years of experience, plus working with athletes nonstop for that same amount of time. The more bland, but tasting good, the food can be, the better in the long run, okay? There's a couple bonuses that I'll throw out there before we cut, and that is simply fermented foods. I found that athletes that generally inject fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, so on and so forth, into their diet tend to feel more full. So that may be something you want to play with. And then we can talk about water. Again, we can go way outside of the rails. We can have 10 tips, 20 tips, 30 tips, but we're trying to keep this a short and quick video of 5 tips with a couple bonuses. And then the other bonus was water. Make sure you're not mistaking hunger for thirst. Just maybe a good idea to monitor your water intake and make sure you're getting at least enough, if not a little bit more than what you think you have to. And then to review, our number 1 tip was count calories by the week, not by the day. Our number 2 tip was start with your protein. Make sure you get your required amount of protein in each and every day, no matter what, no negotiations. Our number 3 was be consistent with all things that surround the food, but also the food. Number 4, eat relatively the same menu each and every day. And then number 5, really, really simple, make it bland. Put those 5 tactics, 4 tactics, 3 tactics, however you want to do, apply it for at least 4 weeks and see how it turns out. Thanks, guys.